I woke up to a woman's voice saying my name like she'd been holding onto it for 12 years. Marcus Riley? Not, sir. Not, can you hear me? My full name. I was 31 years old, flat on my back in the ER with a cracked helmet beside me, road rash burning down my left arm, and enough hospital lights over my face to make me feel like I was being interrogated by heaven. I tried to answer, but my mouth was dry. Then she leaned over me, dark hair pinned back, hazel eyes, a small crescent scar near her chin I had once noticed from 3 seats behind her in 10th grade English because I noticed everything about her back then. Sophie Lang, my high school crush, the girl I never asked to prom because I had been too broke, too shy, and too convinced that girls like her only smiled at guys like me when they needed help with a stuck locker. Only now she wasn't wearing a cheer uniform or carrying a stack of textbooks against her chest. She was wearing navy scrubs, an ID badge, and the calm expression of a woman who had learned how to keep people alive before they had time to panic. "Marcus," she said again, softer. "Can you hear me?" I blinked. "Sophie?" Her face changed just for half a second. Professional mask cracked. Something warm moved underneath it. Then she smiled. And if my heart monitor made a ridiculous little jump right then, I'd like to blame internal bleeding, or shock, or literally anything besides the fact that Sophie Lang was touching my wrist. "I guess you do remember me," she said. I would have laughed, but my ribs disagreed. For context, I wasn't supposed to be in the ER that night. I was supposed to be on my motorcycle riding home from my shift at the airport, where I worked as a gate operations supervisor. My job was mostly delays, tired passengers, missing wheelchairs, and pretending a weather system 3 states over was somehow my personal responsibility. I was good at it, calm under pressure, less good at being useful in my own life. I had been divorced for 10 months. No dramatic scandal, just 2 people who had turned into roommates and finally admitted it. Since then, I had become the kind of man who bought 1 chair for his balcony because buying 2 felt arrogant. That night, a pickup had run a red light. I swerved, hit gravel, and slid hard enough to leave part of myself on the pavement. Now I was lying under fluorescent lights while my teenage dream checked my pupils with a pen light. "Follow my finger," she said. "I used to," I muttered. Her eyebrow lifted. "Excuse me?" "Great. Head injury confirmed. My filter was dead at the scene. I mean, in high school, you always walked fast." She pressed her lips together like she was trying not to smile. "You remember how I walked?" "I remember a lot of useless things. They might not be useless tonight." A curtain moved nearby. Machines beeped. The ER smelled like antiseptic, rainwater, and fear. Sophie's hands were steady as she checked my shoulder, my ribs, the scrape along my jaw. But every now and then, her fingers paused, like she was seeing the boy I used to be underneath the blood and the bruising. "You scared me when they brought you in," she said quietly. That landed harder than the crash. "You knew it was me?" "The second I saw your license." Her voice dropped. "You still make that same face when you're trying not to admit something hurts?" I looked at her then. Really looked. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes now. Not aging exactly, living. She was prettier than she had been at 17 because back then she had seemed impossible. Now she seemed real. And somehow that was worse. "Sophie," I said, "are you my nurse?" "ER nurse practitioner," she corrected, "and only until imaging clears you. After that, if you want to flirt with medical staff, I'll have to recommend someone less emotionally compromised." My monitor betrayed me again. She glanced at it. I closed my eyes. "That machine is defective." "Sure it is." Then the curtain opened. A man stepped in wearing a rain-dark suit and the kind of expensive watch that made every room feel smaller. He looked at Sophie first, then at me, and his expression tightened like he'd walked in on something. "Sophie," he said, "I heard you were down here." Her hand still resting near my wrist slowly pulled away. I didn't know who he was, but I knew the way she went still. And before she could answer him, Sophie leaned close enough that only I could hear her and whispered, "Marcus, do you remember what happened after graduation?" "What happened after graduation?" I repeated. The man in the suit looked between us. "Is there a problem?" Sophie straightened so quickly she almost became a stranger again. "No problem, Grant," she said. "My patient has a possible concussion. I'm assessing his memory." Grant. Of course his name was Grant. He had the posture of a man who had never apologized to a vending machine after it stole his dollar. Tall, clean-shaven, hospital-adjacent, but not hospital-worn. His badge said, Lang Medical Group, Board Director. Lang, my chest tightened, and not because of my ribs. You two know each other? Grant asked. High school, Sophie said. Just high school? Somehow that hurt. Grant smiled at me with all his teeth and none of his warmth. Small world. Smaller when you're horizontal, I said. Sophie coughed once into her fist. Grant didn't laugh. He stepped closer to her. Your mother called twice. She wants to make sure you're still coming Sunday. I'm working a double, Sophie said. She said you'd say that. She knows me well. His jaw flexed. Sophie, can we not do this here? The room seemed to shrink around those words. I was suddenly very aware of the fact that I was shirtless under a thin hospital blanket and had no business witnessing whatever was happening between them. Sophie must have felt it too because she reached for my chart. Mr. Riley needs a CT, she said. We'll talk later. Grant looked at me again, and this time I recognized something in his face. Not jealousy, ownership. Feel better, Marcus, he said, like my name tasted unpleasant. Then he left. The curtain whispered shut behind him. For a few seconds, Sophie didn't move. The ER kept roaring around us, but inside that little bay, everything went quiet. X? I asked. She gave me a tired look. Subtle. I'm on painkillers. My subtle is in Trauma Bay 3. Fiancé, she said. The word hit me clean. Oh. Former fiancé, she added too fast. That helped less than it should have. She clipped the chart to the foot of my bed. We should focus on your head injury. I'd love to. Unfortunately, you just asked me if I remember something from graduation, and then a soap opera walked in wearing Italian shoes. Sophie looked at the curtain, then back at me. Her hazel eyes were guarded now. You really don't remember? I tried. Graduation was a blur of cheap folding chairs on the football field, my mother crying into a tissue, my father not showing up, Sophie walking across the stage to impossible applause, me leaving early because I had a closing shift at a grocery store, then later, rain, a parking lot, someone crying. I frowned and pain sparked behind my eyes. Sophie touched my arm. Don't force it. I remember seeing you outside the gym, I said slowly. After the ceremony, you were upset. Her fingers tightened. I asked if you were okay. You gave me your jacket, she whispered. That came back sharp enough to hurt. A blue denim jacket, my favorite, the one with a hole near the cuff. Sophie Lang standing under the awning while everyone else took photos with flowers and balloons. Mascara streaked down her face, her perfect parents arguing near a black car. You said you couldn't go home, I said. Sophie's eyes shone. I didn't. Memory opened like a door. I had driven her in my beat-up Civic to the overlook above the river. We sat there for hours while rain ticked on the windshield. She told me her parents had chosen her college, her major, her whole life, like ordering from a menu. She said she felt like she was disappearing. I remembered her laughing when I confessed I had never been accepted anywhere because I hadn't applied. I remembered her asking what I wanted. I remembered telling her to leave before I became someone I hate. Then there was something else. A kiss. Not a fantasy. Not a dream I'd polished over years. Real. Sophie's hand on my cheek. Her mouth trembling against mine. The world going silent except for rain. I stared at her. You kissed me. Her smile was sad. You kissed me back. My heart monitor made one accusing beep. But the next day, I said, you were gone. Sophie looked down. My father sent me to Chicago that morning. No phone, no goodbye. I wrote to you. You what? I wrote letters. 3 of them. I never got any letters. Her face changed. Before either of us could speak, an orderly arrived to take me to imaging. Sophie stepped aside, but as my bed started rolling away, she leaned close. Then someone made sure you didn't, she said. Down the hall, past nurses and monitors and open doors, I saw Grant watching us from beside the nurses' station. And suddenly, the crash didn't feel like the worst thing that had happened to me that night. The CT scanner sounded like a washing machine trying to contact aliens. I lay still while it hummed around my skull, but my mind wasn't in that cold, white room. It was 12 years back in a rain-blurred parking lot, watching Sophie Lang vanish from my life like someone had closed a book mid-sentence. 3 letters. I never got any letters. By the time they rolled me back to the ER, the pain meds had softened the edges of everything except that. Sophie was waiting near my bay, arms folded, face composed. Grant stood a few feet away, speaking low enough that I couldn't hear, but I saw her expression. I'd seen it once before. Graduation night, when her parents were telling her what her future would be. Trapped. The orderly parked my bed. CT results should be back soon. Sophie nodded, then turned to Grant. I'm working. This isn't appropriate, he said. What isn't? You treating him? He's a patient. He's Marcus Riley. My name landed between them like evidence. Sophie's eyes narrowed. How do you know his full name? Grant paused. It was tiny, almost nothing, but Sophie saw it. So did I. Grant adjusted his cuff. You said it earlier. No, she said quietly. I didn't. The curtain behind him shifted as a resident hurried past, but none of us moved. Sophie stepped closer. Grant, how do you know Marcus? I don't. Then why did you say it like that? He looked at me then, and for 1 second, the polish cracked. Underneath was irritation, old and ugly. Because your family talked about him, he said. Years ago. Some airport kid who thought one pathetic night meant something. Sophie went pale. I felt the words hit, but slower than they should have. Airport kid. Back then, I worked baggage claim part-time after graduation, sweating in reflective vests, dragging suitcases for people who never looked at me. Sophie's voice dropped. What did you do? Grant laughed once, but it had no humor in it. I was 18. Your father asked me to help clean up a situation. What situation? You were leaving for Chicago. He didn't want distractions. My pulse began to pound so hard my ribs throbbed with it. The letters, I said. Grant's eyes flicked toward me. Sophie whispered, You took them. He didn't deny it. The machines around us kept beeping like nothing had changed, like we hadn't just uncovered the small, cruel hinge our lives had swung on. I delivered mail to the front desk that summer, Grant said. Your father knew my father. He told me if anything came from you, it wasn't to reach him. And if anything came from him? He looked at Sophie. She covered her mouth. I remembered calling her house once in July. Her mother answered, said Sophie had moved on, said I should show dignity. I believed her because people like me believed people like them when they spoke with enough certainty. I wrote 2, I said. Sophie looked at me so fast it hurt to see. 1 letter, I said. Maybe 2. I don't remember. I gave them to your housekeeper because your mother wouldn't let me pass the gate. Grant's silence answered. Sophie turned on him. You knew. I knew what your father knew, Grant said. That you were 17 and dramatic. We were 18. You were confused. No, she said, voice shaking. I was in love. Everything stopped, even the pain. Sophie looked at me then, and her face broke wide open. Not dramatically, not like in movies, more like someone too tired to keep holding a door shut. I was, she said, and I thought you never wrote back. I swallowed against the sudden ache in my throat. I thought the same. Grant's face hardened. This is absurd. You're romanticizing a teenage mistake. Sophie stepped away from him. No, the mistake was trusting you. His expression changed again, sharper. Careful. That single word made me try to sit up. Bad idea. Pain tore through my side, white and vicious. The monitor shrieked. Sophie was at my shoulder instantly. Marcus, don't move! Grant reached for her arm. Sophie! She spun. Do not touch me. The whole bay went silent. A nurse at the station looked over. Grant lifted both hands, but his eyes were cold. You're emotional. I'm clear for the first time in years. Then a doctor pulled back the curtain. CT is clean, he said, oblivious to the war zone. No brain bleed, 2 cracked ribs, sprained wrist, plenty of abrasions. We'll observe him a few hours. Sophie nodded without looking away from Grant. He smiled thinly. We'll discuss this when you're off shift. No, she said. We won't. Grant leaned close enough for only us to hear. Your father won't like that. Sophie's chin lifted. Then he can hate it. Grant left with murder in his posture. Sophie stood there breathing hard. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper, and pressed it into my palm. "My number," she said. "This time, no one gets between us unless you ask them to." I looked down at her handwriting, then from somewhere beyond the curtain, Grant's voice rang out to hospital security. "That patient is harassing staff." For a second, neither of us moved. Then Sophie said very calmly, "Oh, he did not." Two security guards appeared at the curtain, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Riley?" the taller one asked. I raised my uninjured hand. "That's me. Currently harassing this bed." Sophie stepped between us. "This patient has done nothing wrong." One guard glanced at her badge. "We received a report." "From Grant Weller," she said. The shorter guard winced. That told me Grant's name carried weight here, which made sense. Men like him didn't threaten unless they already knew which doors opened for them. Sophie folded her arms. "Then document that the report was false." "Sophie," the taller guard said gently, "we just need statements." "Good. Mine is that Grant Weller interfered with patient care, attempted to intimidate me, and then retaliated when I refused private contact." The guards exchanged a look. I said, "Mine is that I'm on pain medication and still somehow the least delusional man involved." Sophie shot me a warning look, but her mouth twitched. Before anyone could answer, Grant came back with a woman in a white coat. She was older, silver-haired, and carried herself like hospital hallways parted for her. "Sophie," she said, "my office now." Sophie didn't flinch. "Dr. Whitfield, my patient will be reassigned." That hit harder than it should have. Grant's face relaxed into victory. Sophie looked at me, and for the first time that night, she seemed afraid. Not of Grant. Of leaving me alone in a story other people were already trying to rewrite. I held up the folded paper she'd given me. "I've got it." Her eyes softened. Then she turned to Dr. Whitfield. "Fine, but security stays outside his bay until discharge." Dr. Whitfield studied her for a long moment. "Agreed." Grant's jaw tightened. Sophie walked away without looking at him. The ER got loud again after she left, but it felt artificial, like noise piped into an empty room. A new nurse came in, kind and brisk. She checked my vitals, gave me instructions, and pretended not to notice the security guard posted nearby. 2 hours passed. My ribs ached. My wrists throbbed. My phone finally returned in a plastic bag with my wallet and shredded jacket. 7 missed calls from my sister Callie. I called her before she put my face on a milk carton. "You idiot," she answered, crying. "Nice to hear your voice, too." "You crashed your bike?" "Technically, the truck helped." "I'm coming. You have the kids. I'm bringing them." "Please don't bring 3 children to the ER at midnight," she sniffed. "Are you alone?" I looked toward the hall. "No," I said, "not exactly." A pause. "Marcus." "What?" "That voice means a woman. I have cracked ribs. I don't have a voice." "You have one voice. One for customer service, one for mom, and one for when you're about to ruin your life over someone pretty." I closed my eyes. "Go to bed, Callie. Text me the second you're discharged." "I will." "And Marcus?" "Yeah." "Don't let lonely make choices for you." I almost laughed. Then I thought of Sophie saying, "I was in love." "Too late," I whispered. After I hung up, the curtain moved. Not Grant. An older woman stood there in a camel coat, pearl earrings, and an expression so controlled it felt violent. I knew her immediately, though I'd only seen her twice in my life. Sophie's mother. "Marcus Riley," she said. The security guard straightened. "Ma'am, you can't—" "It's fine," I said, though it absolutely wasn't. She stepped inside as if entering a room she owned. Maybe she did in some donor wing way. "You need to leave my daughter alone." I stared at her. 12 years collapsed into one sentence. "You told me she moved on," I said. "She did." "No, you moved her." Her mouth tightened. "Sophie had opportunities. You had a denim jacket and minimum wage. That should have embarrassed me. Instead, it freed something." "You were right," I said. "That was all I had. And somehow, you still saw me as a threat." Her eyes flashed. "Because she was willing to throw away her future for you." "No," I said. "She was willing to choose it herself." For the first time, she looked less certain. Then she leaned closer. Grant can protect her. From what? From mistakes. I laughed, and pain punished me for it. She looked toward the hall. You don't understand our family. I understand enough. No, she said. You don't understand that Sophie's father is sick, that the board is unstable, that Grant's family is the only reason Lang Medical isn't being sold piece by piece. There it was. Not romance, not protection. A transaction. Before I could respond, Sophie appeared behind her mother. Her face was white. So, that's why you pushed me back toward him, Sophie said. Her mother turned. Sophie, you didn't want me safe. You wanted me useful. The silence that followed felt surgical. Then Sophie walked to my bed and took my hand in front of her mother, security, and half the ER. Marcus, she said, voice shaking but clear. When you get discharged, will you let me drive you home? I looked at her hand in mine, then at her mother's furious face. Yes, I said. Sophie nodded. And behind her, Grant stood at the nurse's station, watching us with his phone pressed to his ear. Grant was calling Sophie's father. I knew it before Sophie did. Her mother knew it too, because the anger drained from her face and left something colder behind. Sophie, she said, don't make this harder. Sophie kept holding my hand. Harder for who? Her mother didn't answer. Grant walked toward us, phone still at his ear. Yes, sir. She's with him now. Sophie turned slowly. Hang up. He smiled like he was sorry for her. Your father wants to speak to you. No. Sophie. No, she repeated, and the word carried across the nurse's station. Dr. Whitfield appeared again, but this time she didn't look annoyed. She looked tired. Grant lowered the phone. This hospital is under enough pressure without staff creating scenes. Dr. Whitfield looked at him. Then stop creating them. His smile disappeared. She held up a tablet. Security pulled hallway footage. You entered a patient care area without authorization, grabbed nurse practitioner Lang's arm, and filed a false harassment complaint against an injured patient. Grant's face went red. My family sits on the board. For now, Dr. Whitfield said. Sophie's mother inhaled sharply. Dr. Whitfield continued. And since you brought the board into my ER, I'll be filing a formal ethics report before sunrise. For the first time all night, Grant looked scared. Not broken, not sorry, just scared of consequences. He turned to Sophie. You're throwing away everything. She looked down at my bruised hand in hers. No, she said. I'm finally finding out what was mine. Grant left with her mother behind him, both of them smaller than they had seemed when they came in. Sophie stood there for a long second, trembling. Then she leaned against the bed rail and laughed once. It sounded dangerously close to crying. I squeezed her hand. For the record, this has been a weird hospital visit. She wiped under one eye. Your discharge paperwork is going to be legendary. An hour later, she wheeled me out through the automatic doors herself, even though I argued I could walk. You have 2 cracked ribs and 1 functional wrist, she said. Be quiet. Yes, ma'am. Rain had stopped. The parking lot shone black under the lights. When we reached her car, she paused. I need to say something before this becomes some beautiful misunderstanding again. I looked at her. I'm not 17, she said. I'm tired. I'm complicated. My family is a disaster. I work too much. And I don't know how to do this without being afraid. I nodded. I'm divorced. I eat cereal over the sink. My apartment has 1 chair. I still flinch when good things happen because I assume there's paperwork. She smiled through tears. So, she whispered, we're a mess. Yeah, I said, but this time we have each other's numbers. She laughed then, really laughed, and helped me into the passenger seat. 8 months later, Sophie no longer worked at Lang Medical. Dr. Whitfield helped her transfer to a community clinic across town where nobody cared who her father was, and everyone cared that she could calm a terrified child with 3 words and a sticker. Grant resigned from the board after the ethics investigation widened. Sophie never celebrated it. She just blocked his number, boxed up the last of the life other people had picked for her, and slept for almost 12 hours straight on my couch. My 1 chair became 2, then 4. before. Not because we rushed. We didn't. We learned each other slowly. She learned that I hated peas, loved thunderstorms, and still woke up sometimes reaching for things I thought I'd lost. I learned that Sophie sang off-key in the shower, cried at old dog videos, and kept every letter she'd written me in a shoebox because some stubborn part of her had refused to throw me away. The first time she showed them to me, we sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, knees touching, reading the life that had tried to reach me. The paper had yellowed, the love had not. By the following spring, we drove to the river overlook in my very practical, very unromantic used sedan. No motorcycle. Sophie had made that rule. Rain tapped the windshield just like it had 12 years earlier. She reached across the console and took my hand. "Do you remember now?" she asked. I looked at her. The girl I'd lost, the woman who'd saved me, the future sitting beside me in the rain. "Everything," I said. And this time when she kissed me, no one took the ending from us.